What is up, everybody? Jay the Eighth Dragon here. Welcome back. D&D story time, nerds, and seeing as my main campaign, the one I'm running, is getting a do-over tonight, I thought, oh, what the heck, I will share some stories from that. So this is going to be some of our dumb, or just one of our many dumb instances of what happened. And so so basically what did end up happening, now this story involves our rogue, as well as, or the rogue, as well as I believe, actually no, it's most of the party. So, what essentially happened here, and to give context, was the party's in a Yuan-ti city, that was the original home of one of the paladins before he was outcasted. And, said paladin being in the party at the time, little bit of issues. So what ended up happening was the party's being hunted by a guild of assassins that has been, they've been making life difficult, and these assassins were hired by, the evil king, or an evil king. Really kind of hard to tell. But essentially what had happened is the party's on their way back to their quarters after a long night of drinking. Well, not... Okay, half drinking, to correct my own words. But... And so, essentially what had happened was, Kyrok, the Kenku rogue, and the main topic of our story today, had realized that the road had been trapped, and that there was basically an ambush being set. What basically happened from there is that the party realizes they're being ambushed, and thanks to a really quick reaction by the rest of the group, catch the assassins off guard. And the main issue with that was that there were a lot more of them than our dear party was expecting. Rick. Okay. And so what ended up happening was that, the party pretty much ambushed the assassins instead of being ambushed by the assassins. Now, the funny thing, this is just the context. One fight later and a few really bad saving throws, and most of the party's been knocked out by poison. Now, they were captured and taken to a prison. And so, what happened is the other two party members who hadn't been captured basically went to go rescue the ones who had been captured, which led to a whole shindig with a few of the Yuan-ti paladin's relatives. That aside, because that's a story for another time, basically what ended up like, days later, after they've gotten out of their little scrape with the authorities, there's a festival. Now, this festival is, like, a lot of games, a lot of other stuff, including a fighting tournament, which the entire party signed up for, and pretty much involved the, cleric, screwing over the rogue. But that's a story for another time. Oh, no, I freaked that up. So, in the essence, what happens is... Oh, frick. In the essence, what happens is the... Bleh. Yeah, no, story for another time. But, after a particular stroll through the, city before the festival, the bird manages to spot what appears to be one of the guild members of the guild that's been harassing them. And, you know, unlike, you know, the logical thing to which is, you know, avoid the people trying to kill you, the bird does the exact opposite. In fact, he goes right up and, like, with some help from one of the paladins, scares off the second guild member who was kind of lurking around. And what happens after is, by some sheer string of luck, the rogue manages to get a hold of the offending assassin, guildman. And what essentially happens is that, you know, grapple check, etc., etc., he kidnaps him. And this is where the crimes start to be committed. I'm the only person left on this one. And so, the bird, does something incredibly stupid, which involves, well, he let me preface this by saying he wanted to waterboard the dude in maple syrup. And I'm gonna get restricted for that, for saying that. But it's the truth. It's the truth. Being honest. So essentially what the bird does is, to put it mildly, yeah, he kidnaps him and ties the dude up, kind of hanging from a ceiling. Go figure. And to be very clear, the bird has been the single party member that has no morals at all. He's stolen things. He has, yeah, stolen, murder, like pretty much most things. And that's kind of his big claim to fame, is that he's, like, he also has a habit of forging illegal documents. But that being said, what he does is, over the course of that, like, a few, I don't know how long, essentially tortures the man. Like, using his knife and committing, like, various acts of, you know, what we consider war crimes. You know, torturing of prisoners, etc., etc. And, like, essentially what happens is, like, they eventually let the guy go without killing him, only because of the cleric. And yeah, essentially ticks off the rest of the guild, which leads to, I believe, another guild encounter later. That being said, it was not a pleasant day. Yeah, so the bird committed war crimes, essentially. Tortured the man, left him with, kind of a scar in the shape of the bird's insignia. Whoop-de-doo. And, eventually led to more crap encounters with, a few of the members of the Guild of Nightmares, which is what the guild was called. And I think... Let me see. I believe I have enough time for a second story, and now that I've thought about it, I think I'm going to tell you guys the story of the fight tournament, because that was a whole rigmarole that keeps me laughing to this day. I probably won't laugh right now because I'm focused on something, but rigmarole. So, fight tournament, yes! Another preface to this is that, the Yuan-Ti Paladin had gone dancing with another Yuan-Ti, so that's gonna reoccur later. So, boom. Fight tournament starts off, bunch of different rounds, including a few, NPCs. And one of the NPCs, by the name of Dark, who was I believe, Onyx Dragonborn monk, Way of Elements, if you want to know. So, essentially, what kind of happens is the first starting few rounds, they go fine, a little bit of humor here and there. No big deal, right? So, I'm skipping to a few later rounds. Things start to go bad because what is realized is that there is a member of the King's Royal Guard participating in the tournament. Oh no. And essentially what happens is the monk named Bear, which I will tell you now, the reincarnation of Arcturus for anybody who's been following the campaign. And essentially what happens is the monk goes up against a royal guard by the name of Wings. And you'll see why he's named this in a minute. But, this guy is... Wings is generally kind of spooky. In the essence that he's not... he's a kind NPC. On the outside. But really kind of vicious when put into other situations. And so what happened is, insight on a mechanic to the campaign here, every time one of the royal guards has to go up against a party member, they have to make a wisdom save to resist the control of one of their king, because generally the royal guard don't actually want to kill the party, except for two of them. That being said, there is a... yes, the mechanic. Now, you might think, oh yeah, black-plated knight, he should have good wisdom. No. No, not at all. In fact, the Wings, the royal guard, actually nat ones his wisdom save, and I was very terrified that this was going to happen, because on their own, the Blackguard are incredibly strong. and putting the, like, throwing a, oh no, it's so close. Throwing something else in the mix, this second mechanic of theirs, really makes them kind of terrifying, because they each have a summoning scroll. You might think, well, that's kind of odd. What kind of summoning scroll? Well, these allow them to summon very large creatures to aid them. Wings in particular is able to summon a rock. Now, for the beast to be summoned, the person summoning has to spend a total of 3 turns doing nothing but focusing on the summoning spell. Now, the monk could have side note, Bear, the monk, could have prevented the summoning of the rock. However, instead of going after the Blackguard and trying to break his concentration, he ran. So, the Blackguard in question, Wings, summons his rock and proceeds to absolutely eviscerate the monk in that round. Now, the only thing is, the Blackguard then proceeded to fly back to his king to report that the monk was supposedly dead. The monk wasn't dead. And so, essentially what happens is, after he's healed, the monk is let back into the tournament, which kind of screws over a few of the other party members. Yep. So that being said, moving on to the round where the cleric screws over the bird. Basically, the cleric, high elf cleric, specifically Death Domain. So I bet you can guess where this is going. And Kyrok, the Inquisitor rogue. So, the terrain of the fight tournament changes every round to mix things up a little. So, what essentially happens is it's a forest terrain. They cannot see each other on this first part. So, what does the cleric do? The cleric makes a really good perception check, surprisingly, against the rogue's +10 to stealth. The rogue has expertise, which is terrifying. But that being said, there's not really much that can be done. Now, the thing about Kyrok is he doesn't exactly have the greatest charisma bonus. And with that, he's not exactly the greatest at persuading people. And the cleric has this unfortunate habit of casting banishment, which, for anybody who doesn't know D&D, banishment is a spell that requires the target to make a charisma saving throw, and if the target fails the charisma save, then they are banished to another realm for 1 minute or up to concentration. And if the creature is native to the realm they are banished to, they simply stay banished. This is kind of an issue for Kyrok. He's not a great charisma-based character. At least I don't think so. And so what happens is he screws up his saving throw. Now, remind you, this was supposed to be, fairly even terms of PvP. Just to kind of test what they would do. And, putting it bluntly, you can see where I'm going now. The cleric decided to screw over the rogue, because the rogue, the environment benefits the rogue, not the cleric. Because the rogue would be able to sneak around easier, and the cleric would probably lose sight of the rogue, right? Well, here's what the cleric does. Now, this cleric specializes, Alet, the cleric's name, that's the cleric's name. This cleric decides that it's a good idea, she normally specializes in necrotic spells. Like, huzzah, right? Like, Death Domain clerics are scary, and they've got a lot of stuff involved in that. Putting it more bluntly than anything, the cleric decided to banish the rogue. The rogue fails the save and is banished, which essentially takes him out of that round of the tournament. And later what happens is the cleric goes up against the monk, and which, I mean, it could have worked. It could have, like, the cleric could have done some decent hullabaloo against the monk, because, like, you know, the monk is the monk. He's not exactly the smartest, but he hits a lot. And, like, that being said, I really kind of screwed myself over on this, didn't I? That being said, the rogue, yeah, but anyway, the rogue got banished. Last round of the fighting tournament was where things really went dirty, and this was one of the paladins versus, the paladin's name was Barrage. He's the Warforged paladin, and also kind of the tankiest of the paladins, to put it mildly. But what happens is, I'm trying to remember, it's been a while. So it's the second paladin versus the monk, and if the monk's player, a friend of mine, well, all these people playing in my DnD groups are my friends, but is very competitive by nature. Like, he's awesome, great friend, but he's competitive. And so essentially decided to abuse the monk's stunning strike, which, I mean, any monk player would do this in a one-on-one, but to basically just stun lock the paladin until the paladin finally succeeds his saving throw. And, like, that being said, the paladin was at a point where this, like, side note, this monk has pretty high AC, like an AC of 19. So they're both kind of evenly matched on their hits. But the paladin, both paladins are the Oath of Conquest. So, like, it's kind of a, like, miracle that they hadn't done this beforehand. But basically what the paladin decided to do was they have a spell, command person, like something, it's a command spell, that causes, target has to succeed. If the target doesn't succeed the save throw, then they have to make, they have to do what the caster tells them. Now, in this case, it's one word. Caster has to say the caster only gets one word. And what essentially happens was, obviously, the paladin decides to say surrender. Now, this led to an entire argument about like what the word surrender meant. And don't get me wrong, not really, well, correction, kind of an invalid argument, because, like, if you say surrender, you kind of just have to surrender. But, putting that aside, the monk failed and was forced to surrender. So, yeah. Anyway, that's, that's my string of, like, hey, we're really poor D&D players. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video, enjoyed my small ranting. I don't know what I'm doing with this video. But, see you guys later. Bye.